Hi guys, today on the Reefer we are going to be taking a second look at making shelves in your aquarium. So after I made my first video on how to make shelves to increase your space for frags in your aquarium, I uploaded it, and then when I watched it I realized it was bad. It was a really shaky video. I thought I was showing you guys stuff about how I did things, but instead all I was doing was holding the camera, shaking it around a little bit, and no, that was bad. And what makes matters worse is people are still watching that video. So what I'm going to do here is I have a piece of rock. We're just going to pretend that this is a piece of rock in your tank, or in my tank, and let's say this is the top piece of rock. So you can see right off the bat, there's really not many areas that you can put a frag onto. Both sides are pretty much vertical, and maybe you could put a frag in the middle here. Well, you can't put a frag in the middle here, but if you're into aquascaping, what you probably want to do is instead make some shelves where your frags can go. So instead of this rock holding one frag, you put shelves here on both sides, and you could probably put shelves on these sides too. And then each shelf is going to have a hole in it for a frag plug if necessary. Or you can just glue a piece of coral directly to the shelf. And there are many ways to accomplish this. So one of the ways is I would take a piece of rubble rock, I would glue the coral directly to this piece, and then I would glue and putty this piece onto one of the sides. So if you can, you're gonna have to use your imagination. But if you can see here, with some putty and some glue, like here I found a spot where it seems to fit pretty nicely. So if that's the case, if I could use enough glue, because this is going to be in your tank when you do this, so you're going to have to use quite a bit of glue. But as long as you can use enough glue and or putty, you have your frag on here, and then now you can glue this piece of rock onto here. And what that's going to create is, now you have a shelf, plus your shelf is going to look really natural. So nobody's going to be able to tell that that's not part of this piece of rock. Okay, and I'm showing you this way, but maybe you want to do it like this, the way I did it with my strawberry shortcake. So it's a bit longer, and then you can use some putty at the end here to extend it out even further and to provide space for your frag to grow onto and to encrust onto. So here is an example of when I used a rock, so a small piece of rock, to create a shelf. So here's a strawberry shortcake, and I'm just gonna, so here, this rock, this is actually a small piece of rock that was glued onto this larger piece. Okay, so let's take a side view. So you kind of see, it was a very nice, it was a very nice shape for achieving this result, and it was a rather long piece. So by creating this shelf on a rock where there's really not much space for any other frags, now I have a place where this strawberry shortcake is going to grow out on. And I also did the encrusting, so adding the extra base that this frag can grow out onto. So it's really not going to be missing out on very much here. Here's a frag of red planet. It's kind of hard to see, but I glued this large piece of red planet onto a piece of rubble rock, and then I glued that rock onto, again, this giant structure. So that rock's never going to move, but if you're looking for a natural way to get a piece of coral onto your main base rock, you know, this is another option that you can take. Wow, the red planet's looking pretty nice in this shot, so... Okay, and I'll just show you the side view again. So this is the side view, and this is another thing you can do to create a bit more space for yourself. So that's the first way. Second way is just to use putty. So I said in my other video, I did talk about this, and I will talk about it again. With Reef Epoxy, there are two different types. One type is a very fast drying putty. I mean fast hardening. So what that means is you'll mix the two components of that fast hardening putty together, and it's going to heat up really fast, and it's going to solidify within 10 minutes. So pros and cons. The pro is that it's really fast acting. So when you're actually working with it, it's actually easier to work with as long as you can, as long as you can get what you want done within the 10 minutes. One of the cons with a fast acting one is that it smells, and it smells a lot like if you've been to a dentist, I'm pretty sure they must use a similar type of epoxy, because I get that same smell. And it kind of makes my skimmer go crazy. So pros and cons. This stuff, 24 hours or longer to cure. However, you can speed that up by using heat. That's why I have this hair dryer. But this stuff doesn't really smell, and I like that. So anyways, I need to, I got something I need to epoxy, so we're going to try this out. In the instructions for this stuff, they talk about using a microwave. I will use the hairdryer. And when you're handling any of the stuff, I would definitely recommend gloves. So here, okay. And you want around the same amount of putty, the same amount of each component when you're mixing your putty. Okay, so I've got these two. Okay, so that feels pretty hot now, and I'm just going to mix it together. So I like to do a couple things with this putty. I'm going to create a base for my Oregon tort, which has fallen over. And I'm going to use a bit of it on its frag plug so that it can get a better grip into the rock. So you just want to mix this till you don't see any other colors. And I'm actually going to dip it in water. So the only thing about D&D putty is that it gives off talcum powder. So it's going to make your water seem a bit white. And when it's in water, it's not the easiest thing to deal with or to mold. There we go. So hopefully that will get most of the talcum powder off. If you do find there's a lot of talcum in your tank and your water becomes cloudy, it's just, you just have to remember, it's a fine, there's a fine powder in your tank. And therefore, you can use mechanical filtration to remove it. What I would use is, this is filter floss. So the nice thing about filter floss is that it can capture really fine particles. So if you ever have any cloudy water, either from mud or from sand or from this talcum powder, anything that is just really fine particles in the water, this can clear it up. I got my filter floss from the fish store, but I do know that there are people that talk about just buying a polyester pillow and then taking the filling out of that. So I'm not saying that that is safe, that's just what I've heard some people do. So use that at your own risk, okay? Okay, so after I put it in the water, it cooled down a little bit, so I'm just going to heat it up again. Okay, the heating of this epoxy is supposed to speed up the curing process. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm just gonna illustrate for you guys what I meant by using epoxy to create more shelf space. So here you can see I flattened this piece of epoxy out. And then what you do, if this is in your water, you want to take this and imprint it onto the side of the rock that you want the shelf to go on. Okay. And again, this is going to be in the water, so when it's dry, it sticks pretty easily. But even then, epoxy is not really going to stick to stuff without glue. I don't think. But there, now you can see it's got an imprint of the section of the rock where you want to stick it, and then you're just going to let it dry. Okay, let it dry. If it's a 10-minute stuff, it's going to dry really quick. If it's this stuff, I just left it overnight, or maybe just 3 to 6 hours. It should be tough enough where you can put it into the water. But if you see, there's nowhere that it's really nice for me to put until I find that exact spot where I had imprinted it, and it's just going to fit in there really easily. So once it's dried out and you put the glue on this imprinted part and you glue it on, like, that's going to create a really strong seal. And the other thing I like to do is I'll make a hole, and this hole is so you can stick a frag plug in here. You don't have to glue it down, and you can just observe the coral. If the coral seems happy there, then you can glue it down. But until then, having these holes on your shelves, it's a great way to not have to commit to having something just stuck there. And in addition to this, if you make a bunch of these shelves on all different levels, and you have LED lighting, like, people like to acclimate their corals from the bottom of the tank to whatever height that they want. In which case, this is just going to make it much easier for you to do that. I just want to show you guys what I'm talking about with the shelves, with the little, and making them into a shape where a frag can sit into. So here's the Pac-Man acro, and if you look at the base, so it's on the plug, and the plug's actually sitting in a epoxy frag holder. And this frag holder, I did basically what I showed you guys, and then I glued it onto this piece of rock. Okay, and you can do this Graf Diamante is the same thing. This Stiletta is the same thing. And the nice thing about that is all these frags can be moved if I ever need to. This Pinky Dinky Millie is on the same type of frag plug holder. I hope that was way more helpful than my first video. Thumbs up if you liked it, subs if you loved it, and I'll see you guys next time, and happy holidays.